Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Penny and this is Little by Little. In my last video I made the luxury stove for the new dollhouse. And in today's video I'm going to be carrying on with that same theme and I'm going to make the matching refrigerator for that set. It's a fairly long and involved video. There's lots of steps to this particular project, but I do hope you like it. We're going to start with pieces A, which is your back piece, and the two pieces marked B, which are your sides. And the first thing that I want to do is mark out some measurements on piece A, because I want to be able to divide the fridge portion from the crisper and the crisper from the freezer. So starting from one end using millimeters, we're going to mark out at 69 millimeters, 72 millimeters, 93.5 millimeters, and 96.5 millimeters. Make those same measurements on the other side of the piece of wood and then draw some lines across. For your side pieces, which are your B pieces, you'll need to make your measurements at 3 millimeters, 72 millimeters, 75 millimeters, 96.5 millimeters, 99.5 millimeters, and 144 millimeters. Do that on both sides of the wood and do that for both pieces. And then you can, of course, go ahead and draw your lines across. So your back piece is going to be just a little bit shorter than your side pieces, but those lines should all line up when you put them all together. I've left that middle piece a little bit shorter because our top and bottom are going to sit down inside of that space, like that. We'll put our B pieces to the side for just a minute, and I'm going to bring in pieces marked C, so you should have two of those, one for the top and one for the bottom. So those top and bottom pieces are going to sit on the outside of the back piece. So your back piece is going to sit in between the two, like this. So I'm going to be using my setup blocks, or my 1, 2, 3 blocks, to help keep everything nice and square as we're gluing. So I'm just going to put some glue up on top of this top edge of piece A. And then I'll lay that piece down flat on my mat and just butt that top piece up against it. And here's where you can use your 1, 2, 3 blocks to keep it all straight. Just put one on either side of that top piece. Then you can go ahead and follow the same process for the other side for the bottom piece. So now that our top and bottom are attached, we'll bring back pieces marked B and we're just going to glue those to the side. So we're just going to add our glue around the edges of the back and the top bottom piece. Then you can just take that B piece, make sure that your lines are lined up so you don't have one piece upside down, and then just glue it to the side. So now before we glue that second B side in, I want to glue in the dividing shelves. So these are your pieces marked D, and they're just going to sit in between those 3 millimeter spaces that you've drawn onto the back of the boards. So we're just going to add glue on the two sides of the shelving unit. So now that those two shelves are in, we can go ahead and add in that final B piece to close out the box. So now we're going to work on the fridge doors. So this is a side-by-side fridge. So there's two opening doors for the fridge compartment. So you'll need your pieces marked E and F, and you can separate them. You'll need two short ones and two long ones, or two of each pieces for each side of the door. And all we're going to do here is just create a box. So our short ends will butt up against the longer ends. So basically your longer sides are going to go the full length of the drawer. So you can just add some glue onto one side of your shorter piece and then just lay it on top of the longer piece. So here's our two completed frames. And so these are going to be the fridge doors. And so they'll sit once they're completed on top here. And you'll notice that there is a small, about 1 millimeter gap in between the two doors. And that's just to make it a little bit easier to get the doors open. So now we have our two pieces marked G. So these are the door fronts. One of them is just going to be attached on top of the frame. And you'll notice that it is slightly bigger than the frame itself. There will be a slight overhang on one side, and that's just to fill in that little bit of a gap in between the two doors. On the other door front, I actually want to cut a square out here because I want to add a water dispenser. So I've traced out where I'm going to cut that square, and that square is about 20 millimeters by about 27 millimeters. And it is a little bit off center, and I did that on purpose. So I'm just going to cut out that square using an X-Acto knife. And if I can give you any hints here, it's this. When you do your cuts, work against the grain first. If you try and cut with the grain first, chances are that piece of wood will split all the way through. However, if you've done across the grain first, you have a less likelihood of that happening to you. I'm just going to take a little bit of sandpaper here and just smooth out those edges. So will have the same little bit of an overlap as the other door. And when you're putting them onto the fridge, you just want to make sure that those overlaps are towards the center of the fridge. So we're going to go ahead and glue those drawer fronts on. So we're just going to put a little bit of glue around the outside of the frame and then lay our front piece on top. And again, make sure that it's flush on three sides and that little bit of an overhang is only just on the one side. And we'll follow the same process for the other side of the door. So I'm going to do the front of the crisper drawer next. So you'll need pieces H, I, and J. And we're going to put this together the same way we did the doors for the refrigerator. So we'll start by making a square frame out of your pieces marked H and I. Take one of each of those pieces and we're going to just start building that box. So the short side is going to be on the outside. So we'll take a little bit of glue and put it just on the edge of the longer piece. And then we'll just butt that up against the shorter side. Then we can add the second eye piece to the other side of the longer piece. And then lastly, of course, is the second piece marked H. If you just add a little bit of glue on both ends, and then you can just slide it in between those two other pieces. And now that we have our frame complete, we can just add the top cover onto it. Using that exact same process, take out your pieces K, L, and M and create the same type of box for the freezer section. And here's what they look like all put together. I'm going to do just a little bit of work on the inside of the fridge before I go much farther. So I want to put 2 shelves in the refrigerator section. So I'm going to first measure where I want to have those shelves sit and make sure that it's even on both sides. So I'm going to be using these little craft matchsticks to be my braces for where the shelves are going to sit. So I'm just going to apply a little bit of glue onto one side and slide it in where those measurements are that I drew. So you'll need one of these little matchsticks on either side of the fridge for each drawer that you're going to put in. So here we are now with the 4 bracket pieces that will hold those shelves in place. I'm going to stop here and do a little bit of painting. I'm going to paint the interior of the fridge as well as the inside of each of those drawer fronts. I need to create a little insert or a little box for my water dispenser. So we're going to do that next, and you'll need pieces N, O, and P. So we're going to start just by gluing basically a frame around this cutout space. So I'm going to put my first piece, which is an end piece, on the side. And then I'll put the other end piece, of course, on the opposite side. Once those 2 end pieces are installed, you can take your 2 O pieces and just complete that box. And then lastly, of course, is our piece P, which is just going to close in that box. Okay. And now we have a spot to put in our water dispenser. So this is the look I'm going for. I printed out the fridge on some cardstock, and I printed it as close to scale as I could get it because there's some pieces on this picture that I'm going to use to complete the water dispenser. One of the things that I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to cut out a piece of cardstock that will be basically folded into 3 pieces and then tucked back against the back of the water dispenser. So I'm going to do that first. I want to cut a piece of cardstock that's the same width if I took all 3 of those measurements. So the 2 insides and then across the top. And then I want to make it as high as the water dispenser, not including the top and bottom. So I'll show you what I mean. So I've scored it on 2 sides so that I have a nice crisp fold line. And then that is just going to sit inside of the box. Once you've got the size right, then you can cut a piece of your silver vinyl the same size as your insert. Now I like to cut the vinyl just a little bit bigger than what I need, and then once it's attached to the piece of paper, then you can trim off your excess. Now that that's all cut to size, you can just recrease it so that it will lay flat, and then you can go ahead and insert it inside of that area on the fridge door. Now with the vinyl, what I find works best is if you just put a thin layer of podge either on the back of the vinyl or on the wood itself, and then you can just push that piece of vinyl inside. You will also need to create a top and a bottom for that little box. So I've just cut out 2 little rectangles that will fit those spaces, and we'll put those on the same way as we did the insert part, just putting a piece on the top and the bottom to finish off the box. I'm going to go back now and finish the drawers for the crisper and the freezer. So either one you can start with, doesn't matter. I'm going to start with the crisper. So I'm going to bring back that drawer piece that I made, and then I'm also going to bring back piece Q, which is the base for your drawer, and then you should have 3 pieces with a double A marked on them, and those will be the sides of the drawer. So we're going to take our base piece first, and that should fit fairly loosely into the drawer front. So we're going to take our 3 pieces marked double A, and we're just going to build a 3-sided box. So those 3 pieces are going to go on the 2 longer sides and the 1 short side. So I'm going to start with the back side. So just put a little bit of glue onto one edge of your piece marked double A, and then it'll sit on top of piece Q. Then you can add your 2 side pieces inside of that L shape. Once the box is together, then we're just going to slide the open end into that drawer cover, and we'll glue that in place. And I'll do that just by adding about 1/4 of an inch line of glue all the way around the outside of the box itself, and then you can just slide that in. I'm going to repeat that exact same process for the freezer section. So you can bring back your freezer door. The front of that piece would be M, and then you should have 1 piece marked Q and then 3 pieces marked BB. And just go ahead and make your 3-sided box the same way we did for the crisper. I'm going to paint the inside of both of these drawers so that it matches the inside of the fridge. Now comes the fun part. I'm going to cover the exterior of the fridge in this silver vinyl that I have so that it matches the stove that I made in the last video. So the first thing that I did was I cut out pieces for each of the sides that I'm going to cover. And these are cut a little bit bigger than they need to be, and then once they're on, we can trim them down. Now for these drawers, I'm only doing the exterior box for the door front. I'm not going to do the drawer itself. Now for all of the surfaces that you're going to apply vinyl to, make sure that you've gone in with some really fine grained sandpaper and sanded it down really well. any bumps in your wood will show through the vinyl really well. Then you're going to take a soft cloth and wipe away all of the dust particles from the sanding. Now when I'm applying vinyl, the first thing that I like to do is to just lift up a little bit of that backing from the vinyl and just snip off a piece. It makes it much easier to handle when you're trying to lay it onto the wooden surface. Next, I'm going to put a little layer of Mod Podge onto the surface that I'm going to apply the vinyl to. Now, I put a fair amount on here, but the important thing is when you're doing your brush strokes, make sure that you're not leaving any ridges in between the strokes, because if that Mod Podge dries, you will see those ridges from underneath the vinyl. So make sure that it's nice and smooth. Now you can take your exposed side of the vinyl, so the part that you've cut away the backing, and lay it where you need to put it onto the surface. And then by lifting it up, you can peel off the rest of that backing and you'll have a nice smooth application onto the wood. Smooth out any air bubbles you might find or any lines that you can see through the vinyl until it's all nice and smooth for you. Once the vinyl is on there, you can flip it over and then just use an X-Acto knife and trim away any excess that you have. Don't worry about trying to fold it over those edges. I promise you, there is no amount of glue that will keep that glued down. So just go ahead and trim off the edges, and we're going to cut extra strips for that trim. Now I'm going to add strips along the two sides and the top. I'm not going to bother with the bottom because you'll never see it. I'm going to follow that exact same process for the second drawer and then the two fridge doors. So for all of the edges, so these are like the inside around the doors, the drawers, and then the front of the fridge, all I've done is just cut some very thin strips, the same width as the wood, out of the vinyl, and I'm gluing them on the same way as I glued on the front of the surface. Now you're probably thinking, that sounds really tedious, and I suppose it is. However, I know from my last video trying to do the stove that you cannot bend this vinyl around those corners. It just will not stick. After we put all the vinyl on all of the pieces that we need to, now it's time to attach the fridge doors. So there's a few different ways you can do this. You can use an actual hinge if you want. I'm going to be using just some fabric for my hinge. So this fabric is just like interfacing. If you're a sewer, you probably know what that is, but even if you don't have interfacing, any kind of white cotton fabric will do. So I'm just using something to hold up the door so that it's level with the fridge, and I'm just going to start by adding some podge, and then we'll lay that strip of fabric down just like if it was a band-aid. So you can see here that I have not put any of that vinyl on this part of the project because I don't want the band-aid to stick to the vinyl and pull off. So this is just the painted wood underneath. But if you put your podge there and then just lay your piece of fabric halfway onto that ledge, if you will, or that side of the fridge. Now I'm going to do the same to the one side of the actual fridge door. So again, you can see that I haven't put any vinyl on this section. And we'll just add our podge here, and then I'm going to lay it underneath that Band-Aid and press it down. Add a little more podge now to the underside of that piece of fabric, because we're going to press it down over top or onto the side of the inside of that door. Do the same on the other side. And then we're going to press that into the inside of the fridge. Once it's on there nice and snug, then you can turn the whole project upside down and then just let it rest there until the podge has had a chance to dry. I'm going to add an additional layer of podge over top of everything now, just to give it a little bit more strength. Now I'm just going to close the door part way so that I have that little bit of a crease, and I'll just prop the door up so that it stays upright. I want to be able to open and close this door, so that little piece of fabric needs to be flexible enough to bend. I simply repeated that exact same process to attach the other side of the door. I want those fridge doors to be able to close and stay closed. So I'm going to install a little bit of a magnet system in order to do that. So just using those same craft match sticks that I used to build the braces for the trays, I'm going to take one matchstick. You can see I've already painted it white here. And I'm going to attach to that stick some nails from an air gun or an air nailer. So these you can buy in a box at any hardware store, or if you happen to have a husband who does that kind of work and you just want to steal a couple of pieces from it, great. But the nice thing about these is they come attached like staples, and you can snap off as many as you need depending on what you're trying to do with them. And they make a great metal piece for any kind of magnet system. So I've snapped off 3 pieces of 2 nails each, and I'm just going to glue them across the top of this matchstick. So I'll put one in the middle and then one on either side. Then I've cut 2 smaller pieces of the matchstick, and these should not be longer than the inside of your refrigerator doors. And to each of those 2 smaller pieces of matchstick, I'm going to glue 2 magnets. Now I've left the first piece there just as a guide because I want to make sure that my magnets will line up with the metal nails on the other piece. I'm going to take that longer piece that has the nails attached to it, and we're going to glue that right to the very top of the fridge section. Now I want to make sure that the nails themselves are flush with the edge of the fridge. If you set this back too far, your magnets may not connect, so make sure it's nice and flush with the top edge. Then I'm going to take my two shorter pieces with the magnets and I'm going to attach them to the inside of the refrigerator door. Again, we want to make sure that the surface of the magnets are flush with the edge of the door. So next I'm going to make some little shelves for the inside of the fridge door. So if you can dig out your pieces marked CC and DD, these will be the pieces that we'll use to make those shelves. So starting on the side where the water dispenser is, if you can take your larger piece, which is PCC, and I'm just going to sit that basically on top of that boxed in section that I made for the water dispenser. So just put a little bit of glue on there and then we're just going to put it in on top of that box. Then I'm going to take the smaller one marked DD and I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on one long side and two short sides, and I'm going to put that in on top of that shelf. So move on to the other door. Now you'll notice you still have 3 of the smaller pieces and 2 of the larger pieces. For the very bottom of the fridge door, you don't need to put a shelf there because we're just going to use the bottom of the door itself for the shelf. But I do want to put 2 additional shelves in there. So you can space them out however you want. I didn't really measure anything here. I just kind of eyeballed where I thought the shelves should sit. So there's the 2 shelves. Now I just need to go ahead and put the braces on in front. So those are the completed shelves, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint those white just to match the inside of the fridge. I've also gone in and I've added a couple of extra magnets on each side. I just found that the 2 magnets that I had weren't quite catching as much as I wanted them to, so adding the extra magnets has made it a much better closure. The next thing on the agenda is to make some shelves for the inside of the fridge. Now I want it to look like glass shelves, and obviously using glass isn't feasible, so I'm going to use the next best thing, and I'm just going to be using some plastic packaging. I've cut 2 pieces of the packaging and I've cut them to fit the inside of the fridge. Now I need to make a frame to go around the shelf, and so to do that I've cut out some strips of this polystyrene sheet that I have. This sheet is only 1 millimeter thick, so it's quite small and thin and easy to work with. So I'm going to start by just building a frame all the way around the outside on one side of the plastic. I experimented with a couple of kinds of glue and I found that the Fabri-Tac actually worked best for this material. Once I had the 4 sides done, I took one more additional piece and put it into the middle. And this is the finished shelf, and of course I made 2 because I wanted 2 shelves in the fridge. So from my cardstock, I'm also going to cut out that little display panel that sits above the water dispenser. And I'm just going to use that for my display for the fridge itself. Then I'll go ahead and trim off all of the excess tape. Then I'll back that onto some black cardstock. And you can go ahead and attach that to the front of the door. For the lever that you push to get the water, I'm going to be using these crimp bead connectors. Now these are for jewelry making, and I found these actually on Temu. I got a package of 200 in various colors for $1.97. You can also get these at Michael's in the jewelry section. Now I'm just going to cut off the top piece. These are very, very thin, so you can just cut them with a pair of scissors. So I'm just going to take some glue and glue it up into the top part of where my water dispenser will be. The last step that we need to do to finish this project is to create some handles. So these handles are going to match the handles on the stove that I made in my previous video. So I'm going to be using the same material. So we have some toothpicks and some small gold beads. And then I'm also going to be using some gold vinyl. So I'm going to start by snipping off just a very small piece off of each end of the toothpick. I would say probably about 1/8 of an inch off of each side. I want to make sure that all 4 sticks are the same size. I've cut out 4 strips of the gold vinyl. These are 1 centimeter wide and the same length as the toothpicks. So we're just going to go ahead and take the backing off, and we're just going to do these one at a time. Add a little bit of glue or a little bit of podge onto your toothpick, and then just lay it on the edge of that vinyl. Once you've got it stuck down, you can just very gently roll it forward until the vinyl covers the entire stick. Now I've trimmed back just a tiny bit of that vinyl from the end of the toothpick, just so that the bead will slide on there a little bit easier. Now I'm going to add one of these beads onto each side of the toothpick, and you can glue those on with either that ultimate glue or even some E6000 glue. Any kind of glue that works well with metal will work well here. I'm attaching these handles with just a little bit of glue. And here we have our completed fridge. The only other thing that I did was I went over that control panel with a little bit of dimensional fluid, just because I felt like it needed a little bit more of a shine. But as you can see, all of the drawers open. I'll be filling that full of all kinds of fun miniature food and filling those shelves as well. Thank you very much, as always, for joining. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and we will see you in the next one. Bye for now.